Hello. Uh, this is my fourth time trying to film this video. They say third time's a charm, and that is not true. Um, and I'm having a very clear realization as to why I did not film any part of the previous uh, design series that I put out with Lindsay and Kevin and Sam, because am not cut out for this, but I'm learning, and I really wanted to film this because when CJ and I put out our Women in Data Viz today, we got a lot of feedback on this logo that I created for it, this little cutout title, and I want to show you guys how to do it. It's actually really simple, and I think it looks really cool. And another nice thing about it is I'm pretty sure this is something you can do across design platforms. So I'm going to do an Adobe Illustrator today. That's the design tool I feel most comfortable with, and that's the one I actually created this in. But I'm pretty sure a lot of the functionalities I'm going to be using today exist in Figma and PowerPoint as well. With that said, let's just get started. So the only things I've done so far are created the background, which is this orange large rectangle that we're seeing, and I have that locked. And then I also created the letters, so I'm just going to be spelling out my name today. And the reason I did that before this recording is because we want them to be in separate text boxes, every single letter, so we can have them be going in different directions the way you see with these magenta letters in the background on this one. So just went ahead and did that off camera, so I didn't take up any time with you guys just watching me type. But everything else I want to show you, including how to clean this up a little bit before we start. So the first thing I'm going to do is align these letters. You can see they're sort of all over the place, and we want them to be all at the same baseline. So going to click, drag across everything. Because I locked my background layer, like I said, I won't be selecting or moving that on accident. And then we're just going to go up to my Align tab here, and I'll actually pull it out so you guys can see it, because we're going to do two things in this. One, I want to align all of these across the center. So there's a couple ways that I can do that. One of them is this one, where I can align in the center that way. Another option that I can do is align at the bottom. So either of those work, and the reason it went down, in case you're wondering, is it's just choosing the bottom most of the things I have selected. So I am just going to choose the middle one. And now that they all have the same baseline, you can probably tell that they're not evenly spaced across. So we're going to fix that as well with the distribute spacing option, and we're going to use the horizontal distribute because that's how these are oriented. And I'm just going to put my align panel back until we need it for later. The next thing we're going to do is adjust the font slightly. So the type of font that you're going to want to use for this design is a sans serif font. So that means one without the little feet on them, which is something you might see in more traditional fonts. And then we also want to use a really thick, really bold font. So I like the one I have here, but it's not quite as bold as I want it to be, which I sort of did on purpose because I wanted to show you guys a little trick I use if I want a font to be bolder than the max boldness that it comes in. So this is as bold as this gets as its default, but when this happens, what I like to do is just put a stroke on it, which means an outline. So we're basically going to take these letters as they are and outline them, which I can do over here. So these two squares represent my fill, which means the inside, and my stroke, which is the outside. That red line through that square means that it's not turned on. So I'm just going to click it and select the color to turn that on. It might not look any different because the default for stroke is 1 point, and we are going to change that. So I'm going to take my stroke panel out so you guys can see. I want this actually to be a 14, and I just know that from the 3 previous times that I've filmed this already. So as you can see, it's getting a lot thicker, and this is closer to what I want to use. So going to put that back, and then just to show you guys the difference, I can turn off the stroke and turn it back on, just so you can see really quickly the difference that it makes. Next thing I'm going to do is change the color. I really like the color scheme that I used. I spent quite some time picking out what those 3 colors would be, so I want to keep that the same. That's something I recommend that you guys spend time on if you do want to recreate this. It's really important to get a color scheme that you like because these colors are so close together, maybe closer together than what you might see in some other designs. So with this pink right up against this orange and this blue, so finding a trio of colors that feels right to you is important, and I know I like this one, so just going to use that one again. Next thing we're going to do is expand our text. So again, going to click and drag to select them all, go up to Object at the top and select Expand. Those settings are fine, and you'll notice nothing's different, nothing happened. Basically what we did was change the type that these individual letters are. So previously were text and now they're sort of going to act similar to a shape. The reason we did that is because there are some editing options that you can only do on shapes that you can't do on text, and we're going to need those. So just did that really quick. Next thing we're going to do is create this box. So this blue box is going to be the overlay. Before I do that, I'm just going to select that color. So I'm going to turn off my stroke. We're not going to need that anymore. Use my little eyedropper tool. You can also just press the eye to bring that up and select that blue. Now that I've sort of pre-selected that color, when I make my box, it's already going to be the color that we want, and I'm just going to cover up all of the letters that we have, try to get it semi-even. I'm not going to worry too much about being nitpicky. We could do some cleaning at the end, and that looks pretty good. But we do want it behind the text that we created. So I'm just going to go over here. I'm just going to name this blue box because I'm trying to stay organized, and we're going to take that entire layer and move it below the text we had created earlier. So now we have those pink letters on top. Next thing we want to do is create a duplicate of the letters that we have. So the way I can do this in Illustrator is I have all of my letters in the same folder essentially, and if I take that folder and drag it down to this plus button, I can create a copy. I can drag and select and copy and paste all of them, but I would like to keep these in separate folders for what we're about to do. So this method was easier, but if that method doesn't exist in the tool that you use, copy and pasting works fine as well. Next thing I'm going to do is just turn off the visibility for one of the text layers, and toggling this little eye over in your layers panel just means you won't see it. It'll still be there, but this is a nice option if you need to edit something behind something else, or if you just need to focus on one thing. I don't want to accidentally be editing both sets of text at the same time, so because of that, I'm just going to turn that off, which means I also can't select it, and then going to lock it just to be safe. The next thing we want to do is punch these letters out of this blue box. So basically we want to create these holes that are creating this cutout effect look. So I'm going to, again, drag and select everything. So that's going to select both the blue box and my letters. Then I'm going to go to my shape builder tool and select that. The way this is normally used is to combine shapes together to create one uniform shape. So I use this in my personal finance dashboard to create a little house. I put a triangle on top of a square and then combine them, and it looked like one thing. What we're actually going to do is the reverse, which is subtract one shape from another. So if I hold down Option on my computer, and I have a Mac, so it would be Alt if you have a PC, you can see that it's just going to punch these out of the background, right? I'm sort of just deleting these from that blue box. And if you can tell with the O up here in women, I also cut out the center, and I'm going to do that with the A as well, so just subtract that. And now what was once before 7 pieces, so all the individual letters, and then this box is now just one. So if I move it, you can see through it, which is what we want. Next thing we're going to do is add the drop shadow. So that's what's sort of creating this look on here that's hovering over the background, and this is really easy. It's going to be in my appearance panel on Adobe Illustrator. So if I go to Effects, Stylize, and Drop Shadow, these are already at the settings that I want them to be for this, mainly because this is the last thing that I did. So I have a 7/7 offset with a 5 blur, and actually I think maybe since this is a little bigger than what I created before, I think maybe I want a little bit more of an offset. So just play around, see what feels right with the size of the font that you have and how many letters that you have. Um, I think that looks pretty good, and we can always change it later if we want to. And we are actually almost done. So now that we have that, which is the bulk of what this is, the only thing we have left to do is bring back those magenta letters. So going to unlock it, turn those back on. They look like they filled it, of course, because that's just where they were placed before, and they're still in the same spot. Now we're just going to move those around and sort of play around with it. One thing we do want to do is reverse the layering. So we actually want the blue box to be on top of the letters now. We only put it behind so that we can easily see them to cut it out. And now we're just going to play around with how these are back here. So this is the fun part. And oops, actually just lock the blue box while you're here so you don't do that in accident. And do whatever makes sense. So if you hover over a corner, you're sort of going to get that rotate tool, which is what I was just using. So right here, you can just turn, move them around. One thing I think I did, and not remember exactly, is I think I made them a little smaller than the boxes just so you can see more of the letter, which I think I'm going to end up doing here. Just things like this. Make this a little smaller. And you don't want them to be perfect. You want it to be, to look sort of funky and be going lots of different ways. So, do whatever, I have a couple sticking out of the bottom. Which direction do I want this little guy to go? Maybe at the top. Maybe this one's, maybe we actually make this one bigger and it comes out the side. So I know it looks kind of crazy. It's not exactly the same. You do have to do a little bit of playing around to find out what's going to work for you. But yeah, that's it. Pretty easy steps. So make the letters, find a weight that feels right, punch the letters out of the background, add a drop shadow to the background, and then mix up the way that your letters are facing, and that's it. I think honestly, even without the text, I think just this cutout look is really cool, and I think one of the things that does that is the cutout letters. It's not something that you see often, and having sort of a stark drop shadow on it. But yeah, play around with it. Love to see what you guys make, and I hope this was helpful, and reach out if you have any questions.